The last thing I remember was the sound of steel breaking and the smell of smoke. My vision had gone red, then black. I was a hero once, or something close to it. My final thought was that I'd at least left the world a little better than I'd found it. And then, I woke up at a desk. Not my desk, this one was far too polished, covered in scrolls and glowing crystals. The chair was too soft. The ceiling too bright. I blinked, groggy, staring at a parchment with a golden seal. Appointment notice. Kael Ardent, class instructor, Royal Academy of Arcana. Assigned class, V. I reread it 3 times. Me? A teacher? And class V? That letter hung ominously, like the final chapter of a cursed grimoire. Congratulations! A cheerful voice chirped. A woman in a red robe leaned through the door, all smiles and shining teeth. You're the new instructor for class V, correct?
Oh, what a rare honor.
Her tone suggested it was anything but.
Rare honor?
I asked cautiously. Indeed, she said. No one has lasted more than 3 weeks with them. Don't worry, though.
You seem sturdy enough.
She left before I could ask for a transfer. I rubbed my temples, trying to recall how I'd gotten here.
The memories of my death flickered, fire, pain, the bitter taste of blood, and then a voice whispering, "Teach them well this time."
So, this was my new afterlife? Not heaven, not hell, but homeroom. The hallways of the Royal Academy were a maze of marble and magic. Students passed by in embroidered robes, whispering incantations and gossip. I caught snatches of conversation. Is that the new Class V teacher?
Poor soul. I heard one student set fire to the cafeteria, with her mind.
Encouraging. At last, I found the door marked Class V. It looked like it had survived several small wars. The wood was scarred, one hinge hung loose, and faint scorch marks crawled up the walls. I took a deep breath and pushed it open. Inside sat 5 students. They weren't ordinary children, each carried an aura of danger, like coiled serpents waiting to strike. At the front sat a silver-haired boy with sharp, aristocratic eyes. He didn't even glance up. To his left lounged a girl with raven hair and a bored smirk. A hulking boy leaned back in his chair, cracking his knuckles. Another scribbled in a notebook filled with runes. The last, small, fox-like, smiling too sweetly, was casually flipping a dagger. "Good morning," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm Kael Ardent, your new instructor." No one answered. "Your last instructor," murmured the silver-haired boy, still writing. "He quit after the snake incident. I hope you brought antidotes." Laughter rippled through the room. "Charming," I said, stepping to the blackboard. "Let's get one thing clear. I'm not here to control you. I'm here to make sure none of you end up burning down the world, or yourselves." That got their attention. The boy with the dagger tilted his head. "And if we want to burn it? Then," I said lightly, chalk snapping in my fingers, "I'll make sure you build it again first." Silence. A few blinked. The silver-haired leader finally looked up, curiosity replacing disdain. Maybe, just maybe, I could work with that. When the bell rang and the students filed out, I sank into my chair. So, this was my second life. Teaching a room full of future villains. I glanced at the cracked blackboard where I'd written my first lesson. Power without purpose is destruction. Purpose without compassion is tyranny. I smiled faintly.
"Well then," I murmured, "Class V. Let's see who changes who first."
I arrived early the next morning, determined to make a good impression. The classroom looked surprisingly calm. No smoke, no broken desks, no venomous reptiles. A promising start. I laid out today's lesson plans: ethics of power, responsibility of the gifted, and why arson is not a personality. The quiet lasted all of 10 seconds. A loud boom echoed from the hallway, followed by laughter and the faint smell of ozone. Before I could investigate, the door burst open and a boy covered in soot staggered in. Dre Corin, my hulking student, was holding what used to be a wand. "Morning," he grunted. "Experiment went wrong." "Good morning," I said calmly. "You're only moderately on fire today. Progress." He blinked at me, confused by the lack of shouting. "You're not angry?"
"Oh, I am," I said, conjuring a small gust to extinguish his smoldering sleeve.
I'm just saving it for when the building collapses.
That earned a laugh from the corner. Leora Vex, the manipulative noble girl, leaned back in her chair, legs crossed, eyes glimmering like polished knives.
Charming sense of humor, Professor.
The last one just screamed and ran.
I can scream later, I said dryly. Let's start class. The topic of the day. What makes a villain? I wrote the question on the board. 5 pairs of eyes watched, amused. Easy, said Felix, the fox-like trickster. Someone who wins. Someone who's feared, added Dre. Someone who acts on truth, not hypocrisy, murmured Enwin, the quiet girl buried under her hood. The silver-haired boy, Aaron Vale, said nothing, only smirked. When I looked at him, he finally spoke. A villain is someone the weak call evil because they don't understand strength. The room went still. His words had weight. Cold, practiced, rehearsed. I turned, smiling faintly. Interesting answers. All wrong. A collective humph rippled through the class. I continued, chalk tapping rhythmically. A villain isn't someone who's strong or feared. A villain is someone who forgets why they act. When the reason disappears, all that's left is destruction. They didn't laugh this time. Even Aaron's smirk faded slightly. Then the dagger flew. Felix had flicked it casually at my shoulder. Testing me, probably. I didn't move. The blade stopped midair, trembling a hair's breadth from my throat, caught in a shimmer of blue light. I sighed and snapped my fingers. The dagger dissolved into harmless dust. Creative participation, I said. But next time raise your hand. Felix blinked, then grinned. You're fast, Teach. I had good students in my last life, I replied before I could stop myself. That earned puzzled glances, but no one asked. By the end of the day, the classroom was somehow intact, though my nerves were frayed. As the students packed up, I caught snippets of their talk. Not bad for a new one. He didn't flinch once. He's strange. I like him. I watched them go, a faint warmth stirring under the exhaustion. Just as I was about to leave, Aaron paused at the door. You talk like you've seen real villains before, he said quietly. I met his gaze. I have. Some of them were heroes once. He frowned, just slightly before walking away. That night, as I sat alone in the dim teacher's lounge, the realization hit me. They weren't monsters. Not yet. They were children standing on the edge of darkness, smart, broken, dangerous, yes, but not beyond reach. And I was the only one standing between them and the fate they were born for. I leaned back, gazing at the glowing moon through the window. All right, I murmured. Lesson 1 survived. Let's see how long before Lesson 2 kills me. 3 days into my new teaching career, and the academy hadn't burned down. Statistically speaking, that was a miracle. Still, I had a problem. The students of Class V didn't respect me, they tolerated me. It was like teaching a nest of small, talented vipers who hadn't quite decided if I was interesting enough to bite. I needed to understand them. If I couldn't, I'd lose them before the first month ended. So, I gave them an assignment. Today, I announced, you're going to show me your greatest strength. Something that defines you. The students exchanged glances. Leora smirked, Dre looked excited, Enwin's eyes glowed faintly beneath her hood. Aaron just crossed his arms, clearly unimpressed. Why should we? Felix asked, spinning a coin between his fingers. Because, I said with a smile, if I don't know what makes you strong, I can't teach you how to keep it from destroying you. That earned silence. They didn't agree, but they didn't argue either. Good enough. First up, Leora Vex. She stood gracefully, her silver hair catching the light. My gift is influence, she said simply. Her eyes met mine, and the air shifted. Her voice dripped warmth, comfort, the kind that made you want to trust her. It was subtle magic. Empathy twisted into manipulation. Stop, I said gently. She blinked. Most teachers can't break my spell. I used to deal with kings, I said. Flattery and illusion don't impress me. She smiled, genuine for once. Then maybe you're not a fool. Next was Dre. He walked to the center and cracked his knuckles. I just punch things. Show me, I said. He grinned, and slammed his fist into the training dummy. It exploded into splinters and smoke. The classroom shook. "Impressive," I said. "Now fix it." He froze. "What?" "Strength isn't about how much you can destroy," I said, handing him a broom. "It's about what you can protect after the destruction." The others laughed as he reluctantly started sweeping. Lesson 1. Humor was an underrated teaching tool. Nguyen's turn. Without a word, she raised a hand. Shadows coiled into a floating sphere, a miniature eclipse pulsing with forbidden energy. "Necromantic origin," I muttered. "Illegal in most kingdoms." She flinched. "You'll report me?" "No," I said softly. "But next time, you'll tell me what it costs you to use it." Her eyes widened. "You understand cost? Better than you think." When she sat down, she didn't hide behind her hood again. Felix went next, performing sleight-of-hand tricks and flipping through stolen coins, somehow managing to lift Aaron's ring without him noticing. I watched carefully. "Good hands," I said. "Terrible impulse control." He grinned. "So what's my punishment?" "Write me an essay on moral boundaries in larceny." His jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious about homework," I said. Leora nearly fell out of her chair laughing. Finally, Aaron Vale. The prince stood, silent for a long time. Then, a flicker of dark flame appeared in his palm. Cold, violet, beautiful. "This," he said quietly, "is power that no one can take from me." The room felt smaller, the temperature dropping. I could see why others feared him. "Interesting," I said. "But can you control it?" His eyes narrowed. "Always." I tossed him a glass orb. "Then don't break it." The orb hovered in his hand as the flame flickered dangerously close. He maintained perfect focus for 5 seconds. Then the orb cracked. "Almost," I said. He looked at the shards and, for the first time, didn't smirk. When class ended, the students filed out, quieter than usual. I stayed behind, sweeping up Dre's experiment. Just as I was locking the door, I heard a small voice. It was Nguyen, lingering at the doorway. "Teacher," she said, hesitating. "Why do you care if we control it? Everyone else just says to suppress it." I met her gaze. "Because power doesn't disappear when you hide it. It festers. I'd rather you learn to own it." Her expression softened for the briefest moment before she nodded and left. That night, as I sat at my desk grading Felix's ridiculous essay, which began with "stealing builds character," I realized something. They weren't testing me anymore. They were starting to listen. And that, in a class full of future villains, was the most dangerous miracle of all. By the end of the first week, I'd learned 3 things. 1. The janitor hated Class V. 2. Detention slips meant nothing to children who could teleport. 3. My students were brilliant, terrifying, and one wrong lesson away from tragedy. That last realization kept me awake. So when the Academy announced the practical magic assessment, I knew it would be the perfect, and most dangerous, opportunity to see how far they'd come. The exam took place in the training arena, a colossal stone dome where illusions and reality blurred. Teachers used it to simulate battlefields, disasters, and rescue missions. Class V arrived half awake and unamused. Felix yawned. "Let me guess. Fighting monsters? Or rescuing kittens?" Leora added with mock sweetness. "Neither," I said. "You're rescuing each other." 5 sets of eyes blinked. "Each of you will be trapped in a scenario based on your greatest weakness," I explained. "You pass if you help one another escape." Aaron scoffed. "Teamwork? How quaint." "Quaint keeps people alive," I said. "Begin." The arena shimmered. 5 separate environments bloomed from light: smoke, sand, shadow, and flame. I stood in the observation tower, fingers tight around the control rune. Leora found herself surrounded by mirror versions of herself, each whispering lies. "You don't need them. They're tools, not friends." Her illusionary doubles smiled with the same perfect cruelty she used on others. For a moment she believed them, until Dre appeared, smashing one mirror with his fist. "Stop talking to yourself, it's creepy," he said. She laughed despite the tears in her eyes. The mirrors cracked and vanished. Nguyen's challenge was Daka. She stood before a phantom version of her younger self, eyes hollow, hands soaked in shadow. "You'll always be a monster," it hissed. She fell to her knees, trembling, until Felix slid in beside her, tossing a coin through the illusion. "Monsters don't cry," he said lightly. "You're just bad at being evil." That odd, reckless kindness snapped her out of the trance. The illusion dissolved into dust. Then came Aaron's test. He was trapped inside a burning throne room. Flames licked the pillars, and ghostly courtiers knelt before him, chanting his name, Lord Vale, ruler of ashes. He hesitated, torn between pride and fear. When I saw his flame growing unstable, I tapped the rune to end the illusion. But the control panel sparked and went dead. The simulation had taken on a life of its own. I sprinted into the arena. Heat slammed into me. Aaron stood in the inferno, eyes glowing violet, power spiraling out of control. "Aaron!" I shouted. "Stop!" He didn't hear me, or didn't want to. His voice was low, desperate. "They were right. Power is all I have." I stepped closer, shielding my face. "Then learn to use it for something more." He turned, fury and fear flickering in his expression. "You don't understand." "Don't I?" I reached into the flames, catching his wrist. Pain seared my skin, but I didn't let go. I've watched kingdoms fall because no one taught their heroes how to fail. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Then the fire dimmed. The violet light faded to a soft glow. Aaron blinked, breathing hard. "You're insane." "Occupational hazard," I managed, wincing at the burn marks on my sleeve. He looked around the now quiet arena, then muttered, "You could have just left." "I don't leave my students behind," I said simply. Later, when the healers finished with my arm, the headmaster himself stormed in. "Professor Ardent, Class V caused another system failure." "Again? Did they?" I said mildly. "Because I saw 5 students save one another today." The headmaster sputtered. "Save? They nearly incinerated half the arena." "Progress," I said. He left muttering about paperwork and lunatics. That evening, as I packed up, Aaron appeared in the doorway, hands in his pockets. "You could have been killed," he said. "Probably," I admitted. A pause. Then, almost too quiet to hear, "Thank you." He left before I could reply. I sat back, exhausted, smiling faintly. The burns would heal. The trust I'd earned, that was rarer. Tomorrow, I'd have to think of something even harder than magic control. Something like empathy. And that, I decided, might truly kill me. A week after the arena disaster, I began to notice a change in Class V. Subtle but there. They still argued, cheated, and occasionally set things on fire, but now they looked to me when it happened, as if expecting guidance rather than punishment. It was strange, seeing fragments of trust growing in a classroom built on chaos. I might have started to feel proud. Until Professor Darius showed up. Darius Kerr was the Academy's most decorated combat instructor. Tall, scarred, and radiating the kind of confidence that comes from surviving too many wars. He cornered me in the faculty corridor, a smirk playing on his lips. "Kael Ardent," he said. "The miracle teacher of Class V." "Just Kael's fine," I said cautiously. "I heard what happened during your assessment," Darius continued, voice dripping with disdain. "Risking your life for those delinquents." "They're students," I said. He laughed. "They're time bombs. If the Academy had sense, it would dissolve that class and scatter them before one of them becomes the next Dark Lord." My fists clenched. "They deserve a chance to learn control." "And when they burn down the city," he asked, "will you still call it education?" He walked away before I could answer. I stood there, furious. Not because he was wrong, because he sounded exactly like I once had. The next morning, Darius proved he wasn't finished. I arrived to find Class V lined up in the training yard, facing his squad of elite students, Class A. The best of the best. Heroes in training. Darius stood between them, smiling like a man about to watch a duel. "Ah, Ardent. Perfect timing. Your students challenged mine." "I didn't," Aaron said coldly. "Silence," Darius snapped. "A little demonstration will remind them of their place." The crowd of other teachers and students murmured excitedly. I caught Leora's eye. She looked ready to hex him. Felix twirled a knife behind his back. Dre's knuckles cracked ominously. Enough, I said. My students don't need to prove anything. Oh, but they do, Darius said. The academy deserves to see whether your pet villains belong in chains or in class. That did it. I stepped forward, smiling pleasantly. Fine. 1 round. But I'll set the terms. Darius raised an eyebrow. Oh, not a duel, I said. A rescue. Within minutes, the arena was conjured again. 2 glowing crystals were placed on opposite ends, one held by Darius's Class A, one by mine. Objective: retrieve the opposing crystal without casualties. A simple test of teamwork. Darius's students immediately formed perfect formation, shields raised, spells charged. My students stood around arguing. Felix: who cares about a crystal? Leora: if you'd read the rules. Dre: can I just punch them? And when? Strategy, you fools. Aaron: silent glare. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Remember what we practiced. Use your strengths. Together. Then I stepped back. This had to be theirs. The signal flare shot up. Chaos erupted. Class A moved like a single blade. Disciplined and brilliant. Shields interlocked, a wall of light advancing. Class V looked doomed. Then Leora whispered a spell, and half the arena filled with shimmering illusions of fire. Darius's team hesitated, unsure what was real. Felix slipped through the confusion, fast and invisible. Dre took the hit from 2 light mages, laughing as he drew their attention. Nguyen whispered a counterhex that turned one of Darius's wards against him. And Aaron. Aaron raised his violet flame skyward, letting it burst into harmless sparks, blinding the opposition long enough for Felix to steal the crystal. The flare went off. Match over. The crowd stared. Silence. Then someone cheered, quietly at first, then louder. Darius's face turned red. Illusion and trickery, he barked. That wasn't honorable combat. I smiled. No. It was intelligent combat. And you said they couldn't work together. For once, he had no retort. When the arena cleared, I found Class V lounging under the stands, exhausted but grinning. We won, Felix said proudly. You cooperated, I corrected. Winning was a side effect. Dre handed me the crystal. Here. Souvenir. I took it, feeling oddly moved. You all did well today. Even Aaron allowed himself a faint smile. That evening, I placed the crystal on my desk. Its glow pulsed softly, reflecting off stacks of ungraded papers. Maybe Darius was right in one sense. These children were dangerous. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of that. Because danger, when guided carefully, could become strength. And strength, tempered by trust, might just change everything. I leaned back in my chair and smiled to myself. Lesson 5, I murmured. Never underestimate a villain with friends. The next few days at the academy were quiet. Too quiet. Class V had become popular after the arena match, at least, by scandalous standards. Students whispered about them in the hallways. Some cheered, others scowled. For the first time, the villain class was being noticed. I should have been proud. Instead, I had a bad feeling gnawing at me. And, as usual, my instincts were right. I was halfway through grading Felix's hopeless essay, stealing his art if done stylishly, when Headmaster Oren summoned me. The moment I stepped into his office, I knew trouble was waiting. Darius was there. He stood by the window, arms folded, looking like a man about to deliver a sermon on the dangers of optimism. The headmaster gestured for me to sit. Professor Ardent, Oren began, there have been concerns. I glanced at Darius. Let me guess. Someone thinks I'm teaching my students to overthrow the empire. Darius's smirk didn't falter. Not yet. But you've been indulging them far too much. These are children born from darkness. Kael. You're feeding their arrogance. Arrogance, I said evenly. Or confidence? They defied an order, he snapped. They used forbidden techniques during a sanctioned test. They used what they knew to protect each other, I replied. That's progress. Oren raised a hand. Enough. Professor Darius has requested an evaluation duel between your classes. Officially supervised. 1 week from now. My jaw tightened. An evaluation? Yes, Darius said smoothly. To prove whether your methods produce results, or disasters. I understood then. This wasn't about the students. It was about humiliation. If Class V lost, they'd be expelled. And I'd be gone with them. Fine, I said. 1 week. The students didn't take the news well. He challenged us? Felix shouted, slamming his desk. After we just beat them? Dre cracked his knuckles. I'll crush them again. Don't, I warned. He's setting a trap. He wants you angry and reckless. Aaron's gaze darkened. Then we'll show him what control looks like. I studied him. His tone was calm. Too calm. He wasn't just angry for himself. He was angry for me. That, I realized, was new. Over the week, training consumed us. Leora crafted deception spells so complex they fooled even me. NYN practiced containment barriers until her fingers bled. Felix built mechanical traps that could stun, not kill. Dre learned to pull punches. A bigger miracle than any magic I'd seen. And Aaron? He learned silence. Focus. The stillness before fire. Between drills, I offered advice. A villain doesn't win through destruction, I told them. They win through understanding the board. Every move counts. Felix groaned. Are you teaching us chess again? Yes, I said. Because life is chess. And Darius only knows how to swing the king like a club. The day of the evaluation arrived. The stands were packed. Teachers, nobles, and students, all hungry for spectacle. Darius's class A stood ready, gleaming in polished armor. My students wore mismatched uniforms and defiant smirks. Remember, I said quietly. Win or lose, stay together. Felix grinned. You say that like losing's an option. The bell rang. The field erupted into chaos. Darius's students advanced in perfect formation again. But Class V had changed. They didn't scatter this time. Leora's illusions masked their movements. Dre acted as the shield, absorbing spells. Felix's trap snared half of Class A in harmless nets. NYN's barrier deflected attacks, forcing the enemy to adjust. And Aaron stayed still, eyes closed, waiting. When the opposing captain broke through the front line, Aaron opened his eyes. The flame that bloomed in his hand wasn't violent this time. It was precise. He shaped it into a ring of fire that surrounded their captain harmlessly. A symbol, not a weapon. I surrender, the boy whispered. Silence. Then cheers. Even the audience could see it. Control, cooperation, and restraint. They'd won again. Cleanly, brilliantly, undeniably. Afterward, Darius approached me, jaw tight. You got lucky, he said. No, I replied quietly. They worked for it. He hesitated, then turned away. Be careful, Kael. The world doesn't reward mercy. Maybe not, I said, watching my students laugh and argue in the distance, but someone has to teach it. That evening, Class V gathered in our classroom without being told. Leora brought sweets, Felix stole juice from the cafeteria, and Dre found chairs that weren't broken for once. To surviving another week, Felix said, raising his cup. To annoying Darius, Leora added. To not dying, Dre grinned. They all looked at me. I raised my own cup. To learning what villains never do. How to care. They laughed, but there was a warmth in it that hadn't been there before. As the room filled with chatter and light, I leaned back in my chair, watching them. Maybe I hadn't been reborn to change fate. Maybe I'd just been sent here to remind them that even shadows need a teacher. And for now that was enough. A month passed since the evaluation duel. The academy had grown strangely polite toward us. Students still whispered when Class V walked by, but there was a new tone to it. Curiosity, respect, maybe even a little fear. And I couldn't deny it. My students were improving. They still argued, lied, and occasionally summoned entities best left unsummoned, but they listened now. They learned. Which, of course, is exactly when the academy decided to test them again. I was in the staff lounge when the headmaster called a meeting. All classes will participate in a field evaluation, he announced. A week-long practical outside the academy walls. Survival, diplomacy, and crisis management. Several teachers murmured approvingly. Then he turned to me. Professor Ardent, you will accompany Class V to the northern frontier. The northern frontier. A wilderness full of half-tamed magic and the ruins of old wars. Brilliant. Just brilliant. Darius smirked from across the room. How fitting. Perhaps your class will finally face something they can't charm or cheat. Perhaps, I said. We'll surprise you again. 3 days later. The frontier wind bit cold. Frost clung to the edges of our supplies, and the sky shimmered with faint auroras, remnants of ancient spellfire. Class V trudged behind me, complaining in stereo. Felix, why do we have to walk? We could teleport. And when? Because last time you teleported us into a beehive. Leora, at least it wasn't dull. Dre, are there things here I can punch? Aaron, you people never shut up. I sighed. Teamwork, children. Teamwork. Our assignment was simple. Reach the outpost at Frostvale, deliver a sealed report, and protect the caravan traveling with us. Simple, of course, never meant safe. By the second night, trouble found us. The forest went silent. No wind, no crickets, not even the faint hum of magic. Then came the whispering. Figures emerged from the mist, remnants of corrupted souls, half-transparent and twisted by leftover battlefield spells. Wraiths. The caravan guards froze. Felix dropped his knife. I vote retreat. No retreat, I said, drawing my staff. These things feed on fear. Stay close. But before I could cast, Aaron stepped forward, eyes burning faintly violet. Let me, he said. Aaron. Too late. He raised his hand and unleashed a controlled wave of fire that rolled across the clearing like dawn. The wraith screamed, dissolving into light. The guards stared, awestruck. The flames faded. Aaron stood tall, calm, breathing hard but smiling faintly. I felt something like pride and fear. His control was growing, but so was his power. The rest of the journey went smoother. They shared food, helped the guards, even entertained the children in the caravan. Leora conjured harmless fire butterflies. Felix performed coin tricks. Dre carried sleeping kids on his shoulders. It was strangely wholesome. One evening, by the campfire, Nguyen asked softly, Professor, do you really think we can change? All of us. I looked at them, their tired faces glowing in the firelight, the laughter still clinging to their edges. I don't think you'll change, I said. I think you'll decide. That's harder, and far more important. They grew quiet at that. But peace never lasts. On the final day, as Frostvale's towers appeared in the distance, we found the caravan path blocked by mercenaries wearing the crest of a northern lord. Bandits. Felix whispered. No, I said. Too organized. The leader stepped forward, sneering. You've crossed into Lord Halvik's territory. Tolls do. I could sense their magic. Unstable, corrupted. War survivors. Desperate. Dangerous. Please, I said, keeping my tone calm. We're not here to fight. Then pay. Aaron's flame flared at his palm. We don't owe you anything. The air tensed. Wait, I said sharply. Aaron, stand down. The mercenaries laughed. Looks like your boys got more spine than you, teacher. That did it. I stepped forward, planting my staff into the frozen ground. You want payment? I said quietly. Take this lesson instead. Light burst outward, a defensive barrier that shimmered like glass. The mercenaries' spells struck it and rebounded harmlessly. Behind me, my students formed a perfect ring, Leora's illusions masking movement, Nguyen reinforcing the shield, Dre countering melee strikes, Felix darting in to disarm. And Aaron stayed calm. His fire danced within the barrier, warm, controlled, protective. When the dust cleared, the mercenaries fled into the woods. The guards cheered. The caravan moved on. I turned to Class V, unable to hide my smile. You followed orders. Felix shrugged. For once. Dre grinned. We're learning. Leora flicked her hair.
Don't get sentimental.
But even she was smiling. At Frostvale, as the sun dipped below the icy peaks, the headmaster's messenger awaited us. "Report successful," he said.
"The High Council will review your conduct."
Felix leaned close to me.
"Think they'll promote us?"
I chuckled.
"You're already better than they think." As we left the outpost, I glanced back at the trail we'd conquered, snow marked by faint footprints and sparks of violet light. For the first time since I was reborn, I didn't feel like I was rewriting fate. I felt like I was guiding it. And that perhaps was the real magic. The journey back from Frostvale was quieter than expected.
Class V seemed contemplative.
Even Dre was unusually silent, lost in thought somewhere behind the caravan.
I had a feeling I knew why.
Aaron Vale. The prince had performed flawlessly during the field test, controlling his violet flames with precision few adults could manage. But that calm wasn't comfort. It was tension. That simmering heat beneath the surface, the kind that had saved the caravan and could just as easily destroy it. And I realized for the first time, that control wasn't enough. He wasn't just learning restraint. He was struggling with what he was capable of. That night, in the academy dorms, the students were asleep, or pretending to be. I found Aaron alone on the roof, staring at the moon. The cold wind tugged at his silver hair, but he didn't shiver. "Mind if I join?" I asked softly, careful not to startle him. He didn't answer at first, only continued to gaze upward.
"Aaron," I said, "power isn't just about controlling what you have.
It's about understanding why you have it."
He finally looked at me, eyes reflecting the pale light.
"Why?"
"Because one day," I said, "someone will try to take it from you, or make you use it wrong. If you don't know why you act, you'll lose yourself before they even touch you." Aaron turned away, jaw tight. "And if I like the power? What if I want to use it?" I sighed.
This conversation was inevitable.
"Then you'll have to choose who you are, before the world chooses for you." That's what all of Class V is learning. Strength isn't only physical. It's moral, emotional, and strategic. You already know the first two. The last one is up to you." He said nothing. I left him to the cold night, knowing he was wrestling with a darkness far older than him. The next morning, a letter arrived for me. Official, stamped in black wax. "Professor Ardent. It has come to the attention of the High Council that Class V continues to exceed expectations. Dangerously. Their success at Frostvale is noted. We require immediate observation. Do not fail them or yourself." I frowned. Darius's smirk flashed in my mind. The council wouldn't be neutral. They'd be looking for any excuse to discredit me. And I knew why. Class V wasn't just a class. They were proof that villainous potential could be guided. That idea alone was dangerous to the academy. That afternoon, I gathered the students.
"You've all done well," I began.
"But there's more to learn. Power isn't only about controlling your abilities, it's about facing the shadow within."
Felix tilted his head. "Shadow within?
You mean like scary feelings?"
"Yes," I said.
"Fear, anger, temptation. The parts of yourself that could make you dangerous. Even to your friends." The students groaned. Dre crossed his arms. Leora raised a brow. NYN scribbled notes silently. Aaron simply stared at me, expression unreadable. "We're going to face those shadows," I continued. "In controlled simulations. Alone, in teams, and as a class. You'll see what you're capable of, and what you need to hold back." The room went silent. They didn't like it. They didn't know that this was the moment where true villains, or true leaders, were born. Later, when everyone had left, I stared at the empty classroom. Aaron's shadow was already stretching across the floor, though he wasn't there. His potential for destruction was immense, but so was his capacity for restraint. If I guided him properly, he could become something extraordinary or catastrophic. And for the first time, I realized my role wasn't just to teach. They were my responsibility. Not just to the academy or to the world but to them. The shadow within wasn't waiting outside. It was already here, inside all of us. And the hardest part would be teaching them to face it, without losing themselves. The days after the shadow within exercise were tense. Class V moved with precision now, each step measured,
each spell carefully controlled. But there was an undercurrent, an unspoken question none of them dared to voice. What happens when trust breaks? I didn't have to wait long to find out. It started with small things. Missing supplies. Notes gone from desks. Minor spells gone awry during practice. I brushed them off at first. Students testing limits, mistakes happen, but the pattern grew. Then one evening, NYN disappeared from the classroom. I found her on the roof of the academy's east wing, shivering, hood drawn over her face. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She just waited. "NYN," I said softly. "What's going on?" Her voice trembled. I had to see them." "See who?" She hesitated. Finally the words came. "The Shadow Guild. They said they could make me stronger. That they could help me control what's inside." My stomach twisted. The Shadow Guild, an underground faction of rogue mages, villains who'd abandoned any morality for power. If NYN joined them, there would be no turning back. "NYN, listen to me," I said firmly, stepping closer. "You don't need them. You have strength. You have friends. You have a choice. You always have a choice." She shook her head, tears spilling over. "But they understand me. They get me. I'm broken." I knelt to meet her eyes. "We all are. But being broken isn't a reason to let the darkness win. Look at your classmates. They're not perfect either, but they've chosen to fight together." She didn't speak. Just stared. Her fingers twitched as if reaching for an invisible hand. Finally, I reached out and touched her shoulder gently. "I won't force you. But you need to trust someone before it's too late. Trust me, NYN." Something in her shifted. Slowly, she nodded, tears still falling. The next day, I called a class meeting. "I know someone tried to reach out to you," I said carefully, not naming names. "Someone offered power. Without responsibility. Tempting, yes. But if you choose to accept it, you're no longer part of this team. You're on your own." A silence fell over the room. Each of them was thinking. Not about me but about each other. Aaron was the first to speak. "We don't leave anyone behind." His voice was quiet, but firm. Leora added, "We're stronger together. Don't tempt her again, or any of us." Dre's grin was grim. "If anyone tries to take one of us, they'll regret it." Even Felix, twisting his knife casually, nodded. "Yeah. No one screws with Class V." I looked at them, my chest tight. This was what I wanted. Loyalty. Trust. Connection. But it wasn't easy. And it wasn't painless. That evening, NYN approached me in the empty classroom. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I almost betrayed you. Betrayed all of us." I smiled softly. "It's not betrayal. It's doubt. And everyone has doubts. Even me." She looked down. Will I be okay?" "You'll be fine," I said. "You're learning how to survive the darkness. That's the hardest part, and you're already doing it." Her lips trembled into the faintest smile. "Thank you, teacher." For a moment, I let myself breathe. Then I realized, this was just the beginning. Trust was fragile. Shadows weren't just around them, they were inside them. And one wrong choice could undo everything we'd worked for. But for the first time, I believed they could fight it together. Class V wasn't just a class anymore. They were a family. And families fight for each other, no matter what. The academy hall gleamed under the morning sun, banners fluttering, and the air thick with anticipation. Graduation day. For most classes, it was a celebration of accomplishments, straight A's, accolades, and heroics. For Class V it was something different. They were known, feared, whispered about in every corridor. Yet here they stood, tall and composed, no longer the chaotic misfits who had entered my classroom months ago. I watched them from the podium, a mix of pride and worry knotting my chest. Leora's smirk was softer now, less calculating. Dre's presence still commanded attention, but he moved with restraint. NYN's eyes glimmered with quiet confidence, no longer hiding behind her hood. Felix grinned mischievously, but there was an edge of responsibility beneath the playfulness. And Aaron Vale. Aaron stood at the center, his violet flame flickering faintly, no longer wild, no longer hungry. His control had grown beyond my expectations, but the shadow within him still lingered, a reminder of the darkness he might yet wield. The headmaster approached, robe swishing, his expression unreadable. "Professor Ardent," he said, voice formal, "your guidance of Class V has been unprecedented, perhaps even dangerous." I smiled, unfazed. "I trained them to understand themselves, to control what makes them strong, and to choose, not blindly follow destiny." He paused, looking at the students. "Indeed, you've managed the impossible. But remember, the world outside this academy will not be as forgiving." I nodded. "They're ready. And they're not alone." The ceremony began. Certificates were handed out, speeches delivered, and for the first time, I saw the weight of responsibility lift from their shoulders, replaced with purpose. One by one they stepped forward. Leora received hers with elegance, eyes meeting mine with a hint of gratitude. Dre's award was almost ceremonial. He'd been impossible to manage, but he gave a nod of respect in my direction. Enwyn's hands trembled slightly as she accepted hers. I gave her a reassuring smile. Felix, predictably, made a show, twirling his certificate like a knife before handing it to me. Finally, Aaron approached. The hall seemed to still around him. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The calm in his posture, the controlled flame dancing in his palm, it said everything. When the final applause ended, I gathered the class together. "This isn't the end," I told them. "It's a beginning. You'll face challenges, temptations, and darkness. You'll be called villains, feared, misunderstood. But remember what you've learned here. Strength isn't just power. It's understanding, restraint, and loyalty." They nodded, each of them silently absorbing the weight of the moment. Later, as the academy emptied, we stood together outside the grand gates. Felix broke the silence first. "So, what now, Teach?" I smiled. "Now you live. You make choices. You decide who you'll become." Leora nudged me lightly. "And you'll still try to control us, won't you?" "Of course," I said, chuckling. "Someone has to." Dre flexed his hands, looking at the horizon. "Let's see how the world handles Class V." Aaron's gaze lingered on me, faint violet sparks dancing across his fingers. "We'll make our own way. And we'll survive it." Enwyn whispered softly, "Because we're together." I looked at them. My students, my responsibility, my chaos and my pride. They weren't heroes. They weren't saints. They were something more complicated. Something dangerous. Something extraordinary. And I had taught them to choose, not just follow fate. For the first time since my rebirth, I allowed myself to breathe. Class V had grown. They had learned. And maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't ready for them, but they were ready for it. I smiled to myself. "Graduation of shadows," I murmured. "Completed." And for the first time, the shadows didn't feel so frightening. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.